I mean, what they're claiming is to have gone to the moon 50 years ago with 1960s technology, which is 1/1,000,000th the computing power of a modern day cell phone, on the first attempt, which is 1,000 times farther than they can go today. And people still think that it's real. And we looked at this in another picture. We looked at this earlier. Here are shadows lit by the sun, 93 million miles away, 1,000 times more diameter than the Earth. Therefore, it's going to light everything evenly, parallel in the same direction, no matter where you stand. And here's a picture from the moon, allegedly, from Apollo 14, where the astronaut shadow is going 12 o'clock and the rock is going 9 o'clock, and they're about 5 feet apart from one another. I mean, it's impossible for this picture to have been lit by the sun like they claimed. This was shot with an electrical light, because if you're on the right-hand side of it, the shadow goes one way. If you're on the left-hand side, the shadow goes another way. I mean, it's so obvious. Out of all the clues, and I'll be glad to put in the description of this video the link to a incredibly detailed article as to why the moon landings are fake. All you need is this one picture on the right here. This alone proves that the moon landings are fake. And in all the videos out there about why my film is not true and trying to reassure everyone that, yes, the moon landings are real, they never talk about this photograph. This photograph alone proves that the moon landings are fake, despite the radiation belt, despite the logic that they could not go 1,000 times farther 50 years ago on the first attempt than they can go today. All this logic is summed up and boiled down to this one picture on the right. And it gets even better. Now, some of you have seen this, or we're just going to take a look at it again. Here's what they said they did with this amazing technology.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Well, you know, it's really interesting. It's such a painful process to build it back again, because in the 1960s, it only took 6.5 years to build the technology to go to the moon. I mean, and now, 50 years later, it's going to take more than 6 years with all the development and technology. I mean, please, somebody out there, if you could tell me one moment in the entire history of the world where new technology, whether it be fire or radio or television or nuclear fusion, when they split the atom into nuclear reactors, nuclear bombs, or a cell phone, or a microwave oven, or an airplane, any time in the entire history of the world where a technology was developed and then they threw it in a furnace along with all the schematics. Because that's what they did. All the blueprints from Apollo are destroyed. All the telemetry data is destroyed. All the battery specifications, electronic specifications of the lunar module, they were destroyed. Now, if you can tell me one other time in the entire history of the world where technology was developed and then they threw it away when they were done, then maybe I'll admit that the moon landings are real. But it's never happened before. Even the technology of building the nuclear bomb, which should have been destroyed, they cherished it with all relish, and 50 years later, bombs are 500 times more powerful. After Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic in 1927, 50 years later, there were 747s and millions of aircraft flying across the Atlantic. And yet we're to believe 50 years ago, on the very first attempt, with 1/1,000,000th the computing power of a cell phone, they went 1,000 times farther than the best rocket can travel today with a man on board. And people still think they went to the moon. I mean, it just boggles my mind. And here I am pleading and begging with people to wake up for the purpose of reforming the government, reforming the earth, reforming mankind to truthfulness, honesty, integrity. And no one cares. In fact, they so much don't care, they naively defend criminal behavior. I mean, when the rocket was launched, people said, "My God." Well, from the overflowing of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's what the Bible says. This has become their God. When someone draws a cartoon of Mohammed and then people are murdered because of it, that very fanaticism proves the error of their argument to begin with. I get emails from people hating me so much. One said they wish that they could watch me, my wife, and my children burn alive before their eyes. Now, if they really went to the moon, why would somebody say such a thing? I mean, I'm just some idiot who thinks, the government's deceptive when they're really so truthful. But the fact that they're so fanatical proves the error of their argument to begin with. I mean, we don't go around threatening people who believe that the moon landings are real. We gently try to steer them into the proper direction of the truth. I mean, if they really went to the moon, there shouldn't be need of thousands and thousands of videos and TV programs and websites to refute, the emerging information that the moon landings are fake. I mean, again, you only need 3 simple points. Number 1, they claim they went 1,000 times farther than they can go today on the first attempt with technology that was 1/1,000,000th the computing power of today. Secondly, you have these pictures, sunlight on the left, television lighting on the right, and they still think we went to the moon. And then you have this naive guy, Mr. Don Pettit, saying, we destroyed the technology, when that's never been done in the history of the world. Did Bill Gates spend $150 billion, which is the cost of the moon landings in today's dollars, to build the first computer? And then when he was done, he took the computer and the schematics and threw them into the furnace? No, that did not happen. Well, let me tell you exactly why that did not happen, because no one would do such a thing. If they really went to the moon, they would have cherished that technology. And if they really went to the moon 50 years ago, there would have been bases on Mars 25 years ago, and there'd be bases on the moon right now. I mean, the only reason you would destroy the schematics of something like that would be if they could later prove that it was falsified through some clever analyzing of the rocket fuel or the battery power or things like that. So the fact that they did destroy it is proof that they falsified it. Because if they really went, the last thing they would do would be to destroy the technology. So the fact that they did destroy the alleged technology to go to the moon is proof itself that it was a fraud. This has been Brother Bart's Conspiracy Corner News, begging people to wake up and wake up their friends so that we can reform our government to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Because Congress and the Senate, they didn't vote on faking the moon landing. Someone else did that. The CIA did that. They own YouTube, they own Google, they own Facebook. I believe they bought out AT&T, Verizon, all that stuff so they can control information. The Central Information Agency. Intelligence is information. So, the only reason they let this video up here is because if they took it down, it would all the more prove me right.